candidates for Washington State Governor in alphabetical order. Bob Ferguson, representing the Democratic Party.
Look, Washington State is facing many challenges. We'll talk about those today, I'm sure. What we need in a governor is someone who's a change agent, who's going to change the culture of state government, to center your voices, take on those challenges, while at the same time defending the core freedoms that Washingtonians value here in our state. I've been to all 39 counties as I campaign across the state. My campaign is the only campaign that takes no donations from large corporations or corporate PACs. We center your voice. Thank you. So I think I was mentioning I'm the only candidate who does not accept political donations from large corporations or corporate PACs. Why? Because I center your voices in the decisions I make as Attorney General and as your next governor. I'm proud to have a broad coalition of endorsements from across the state, including APIC, the Asian Pacific Islander Americans for Civic Empowerment. They know I center your voices in my work as Attorney General. I think you asked for 3 top priorities. I'll mention them briefly now. Number 1, top priority, public safety. The first plan I put on my website was on public safety. Washington State ranks last per capita for number of law enforcement officers we have. We need to change that. And I'll put $100 million into my first budget so local jurisdictions can attract more law enforcement officers to their communities. Housing. We have a housing crisis across our state. Housing of all kinds, we need more construction. We'll talk more about that. Third, education, increase in our investments in education and workforce training. I'm the son of a public school teacher and a career-going employee. It's an honor to be here today, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And David Reichert.
I'm happy to be here today. I would ask you all to just take a moment and think about your personal lives and where you are today. Where you are today is a result of the choices that you made in your life and the choices that your mother and father, your aunts and uncles, your cousins made in your life, teachers and bosses, fellow employees, making decisions together about your life. You are probably somewhere in your life where you never thought you would be. I am running as governor of Washington State, growing up in the Renton Highlands in an 800 square foot home with 9 people. And here I am today asking you to vote for me as governor. You know my career. After leaving Renton Highlands, I graduated from Kent Meridian High School, and I went on to be the first elected sheriff in 30 years in Kane County, the largest sheriff's office in the state of Washington, 12th largest across the country. That's my number 1 priority, is the criminal justice system. I went on to Congress, and I worked in Congress as a trade chairman, the tax chairman, the human resources chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. My number 2 priority is the economy. Well, actually, they're combined together, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later also. Economy, crime, homelessness, education. So I named actually 4, and I don't see those being separated at all. They're actually intertwined together. When we pull on one strand, we affect the economy, we affect the criminal justice system. I'm happy to be with you here today. I appreciate your kind attention, and I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that was a little better, audience, but I'm going to ask staff and organizers to kind of monitor the back of that room because there's still a lot of people talking back there, and it's really disrespectful. We can hear you up here, so don't pretend you're not talking. Okay? Thank you very much for those comments, gentlemen. Our first question, and we will start with Congressman Reichert this time. According to the Office of Financial Management, Washington State is home to over 800,000 Asian Americans, over 70,000 Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. Many of these members make use of important social services and government programs to take care of themselves and their families. As governor, how would you enhance or create programs important to the AA and HPI community, especially when it comes to jobs, pay equity, and affordable housing? Congressman Reichert.
that question. Thank you again for being here. As the sheriff of King County, I had the opportunity to work with quite a diverse group of people in King County as the 12th largest sheriff's office in the country. And in fact, made sure that we hired people that represented our diverse community in the sheriff's office. One of the things that I am proud of as working in the sheriff's office was hiring, I don't know if you knew this or not, but back during the W2O era, hired 25 officers from Honolulu who wanted to move to Washington State. We were proud to have them as a part of the King County Sheriff's Office. We had a very diverse command staff, also picking and choosing the best people, and also those that represented our community. I am really interested, though, in talking to each and every one of you, because I think we need to have a government that's inclusive, where we can talk to each other about the rising costs of homes and what's causing those rising costs. Number one is the gas prices here in Washington State that we pay increases the price of everything that we buy. The zoning laws in this state need to be changed so that you can build buildings easier. Those permitting laws need to be streamlined in Washington State so you can get a permit to build or add on to your building. Those regulations that are so burdensome on businesses, small businesses across this state, need to be revamped. We also need to take a look at not only the rezoning, the revamping of permitting, but we also have to make sure that we can provide some tax incentives so that we can build low-income housing for those people who are homeless, who have a job, can't afford a home. Those are the things that we need to do to work together. And what I look forward to doing is sitting down with all of you and coming up with a solution to the problems that we face here, not only in the economy, but across the state as we look at the rest of the problems that we had mentioned earlier. Thank you for your attention.
Very much, very good wrap. Mr. Ferguson, same question.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the question mentioning the importance of social services. Before I got into politics, I actually spent a year directing and running an emergency services office, working in a diverse community and helping folks out with a whole range of social services. And that's important to make sure as a state we're investing in that. What's also important, I think that gets to the issues in your question, is making sure we're getting the voices of all Washingtonians and diverse communities in making our decisions. Let me give you an example of that. As Attorney General, I realized we as a state have all these task forces that the legislature and the governor ask Washingtonians to serve on. Those task forces are important. They give guidance to the legislature who makes big policy that impact your lives. Well, guess what? Who's got time to take an entire day off from work to go serve on the task force? You're busy, you've got jobs. Only a small slice of our population can do that. I proposed legislation that said we compensate people who serve on those task forces. So you can take some time away from your job or away from other obligations and serve on that task force and influence that policy. We're bringing more voices to the table, and that's important. And I've done that as your Attorney General. Before I was Attorney General, if you called our office with a civil rights complaint, and you know the attacks on Asian Americans have only gone up in recent years. We've seen that in the Seattle Times article that was published just this week. I created a civil rights division in my office, named after Ling Loop, first Asian American elected to political office in the Pacific Northwest. That civil rights division advocates for all Washingtonians, diverse communities, and does tremendous work on behalf of all Washingtonians all across state. And that's what I'm referring to in the point of centering Washingtonians in decisions we make, and that'll be my priority as your next governor.
You have 20 seconds more. 20 seconds more? Okay, that's fine. Question number 2. Many people in Washington State have health insurance, thankfully. Washington State, in fact, has some of the highest health insurance coverage rates in the country. However, there are still those without insurance who still struggle with affordability. Affordability and language access continue to be barriers to coverage for many Asians, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders in Washington State. How would you, as governor, work to improve healthcare access, affordability, and cultural and linguistic access for all Washingtonians. Mr. Ferguson.
Well, this is a critical issue for Washingtonians. So first thing we can do is increase the reimbursement rate we have for Apple Health, which serves individuals who need it. That will increase the number of providers who serve those individuals, and that will increase access to care. And this has been a priority in my time as Attorney General. Take the Affordable Care Act. If you have a pre-existing condition, if you're one of hundreds of thousands of Washingtonians with a pre-existing condition, the Affordable Care Act provides you coverage. I defended the Affordable Care Act in court when there was a challenge brought by Republican attorneys general. Look, my opponent voted dozens of times in Congress to repeal the Affordable Care Act. That would strip away those protections. I worked as Attorney General to defend it and make sure you have those protections. Also, as Attorney General, one thing we know is more and more we see mergers of healthcare entities that limit competition and limit access for you. My team has taken on those anti-competitive mergers and won in court to increase access to healthcare all across the state. One more thing I'll mention if I've got a few more seconds, which is I proposed a law that passed the state legislature in a bipartisan fashion, which increased by literally millions of Washingtonians who can get health care, or low-income Washingtonians get health care without paying for that health care. Before that law that I proposed, the number of individuals who could access that health care was very, very limited. We changed that, proposed a law that increases by literally millions of Washingtonians access to free or reduced costs to affordable health care right here in Washington State. So this is critical for Washingtonians. We need a governor who defends the Affordable Care Act, who fights for your access to health care all across the state. I've done that as your Attorney General, and I'll do that as your governor as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman Reichert.
Well, thank you. I think we can fight for each other and our affordable health care in many different ways. My wife and I recently had to search for a new doctor because our doctor retired. It took us almost 6-7 months to find someone that would actually accept new patients. So I think there's a shortage of medical professionals in our community. And one of the ways that we can address that is by providing early education to our young people in middle school and high school, maybe a Running Start program for young people who are interested in the medical profession, whether it's mental health or other fields in the medical profession. I also think that we can really improve our connection to our medical professional through the improvements in telemedication and having that ability to speak with our doctors and our healthcare providers through our technology that's provided to us today. The other thing that we need to do is to make sure that, especially for the elderly in our community, make sure that we have people who can interpret and communicate clearly with our elderly and their medical professional. Another problem that you may or may not be aware of is that there is a shortage of hospital beds in Washington State, a big shortage. And there's also a backup in our emergency rooms. So working together, we can address those shortages, and I think we need to take a real close look at the public-private partnerships. I've talked to many of the major CEOs here in Washington State, and they are ready to get involved in helping build more hospitals, provide more hospital beds, and also provide education for our young people to go into the healthcare world. Also, I would like to say that one of the things that we can do to help families out is to remove the sales tax from baby essentials. So diapers and baby food and those things. Let's get rid of the sales tax and help those families out.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, you're doing great. Thank you so much. Question number 3. This is our final question before final statements. Congressman Reichert will go first. The Environmental Protection Agency reports that harm to the environment and climate change have a disproportionately harmful effect on Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities. This includes a higher likelihood of living in areas with poor air quality, higher exposure to extreme temperatures during work and daily life, and higher risk of exposure to coastal and inland flooding. This means that protecting the environment and combating climate change are high priorities for our communities. As governor, what are your plans for protecting the environment and combating climate change? Congressman Reichert.
Thank you. Well, I think everyone in this room, and as I speak to people across the state, it doesn't matter what group I talk to, I ask them, hey, how many in here want to make sure our water is clean for our children? Every hand goes up. How many want to make sure that our air is clean for our children and our grandchildren? I have 6 great-grandchildren, well, 5 great-grandchildren, and 1 on the way, thank you. How many want to make sure that our forests are protected? And how many want to make sure that our wildlife is protected, our salmon runs are protected? We all do. We want to make sure that Washington State stays clean, green, and pristine. But we can't set arbitrary dates to make this happen. We have to transition into the future, clean energy fuel of the future. And we have some energy right now being developed. Small modular nuclear, for example, is a clean energy resource for us that we could use. I am a person who wants to look at all of the above energy as we transition into the new technology of tomorrow. Make sure that we have a clean, green, pristine Washington State. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you. So there's a pretty big contrast on this issue. So I appreciate, Congressman, what you said about clean, green, and pristine, but guess what? As elected officials, we have to make important decisions. And there's a big issue right now before our state related to climate specifically. There's a law that requires big corporations that pollute our environment to pay hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And the state's using that money to go to exactly your question, to address the climate crisis and create good paying jobs all across the state for those projects. There's just one problem. My opponent does not support that law, and I do support that law. We have a big transition to a clean energy economy. I support that, he does not, and that's important for issues related to climate. I'll also add that I'm proud to be the only candidate endorsed by environmental organizations who care deeply about this issue. Sierra Club, Washington Conservation Action. They endorse me because they know this is a priority for me and my term as governor. And I've demonstrated that as your Attorney General. I created an environmental enforcement division in my office. So if there's polluters out there, guess what? My team holds them accountable, makes them pay hundreds of millions of dollars the state can now use to keep Washington State clean, green, and pristine. But that requires leadership, not just talk. It requires actual leadership, holding entities accountable, making sure we're defending laws that keep our environment helpful for all Washingtonians. One more thing I'll say.
30 seconds.
One more thing I just want in my last 30 seconds is that law also provides for what's called a working families tax credit. That's dollars back in the pockets for hundreds of thousands of Washingtonians. I support that. We'll increase the amount of the funds going to that working families tax credit to help Washingtonians who are struggling with this economy. The state should be making sure we're putting dollars back in your pockets when folks are struggling. Thank you.
You will now have 2 minutes for a closing statement. In that closing statement, it would be wonderful if you will include how you would work to build relationships and further engage the AANHPI community, but it's your choice. 2 minutes, and I will give you a 30-second cue as well. We will start with Bob Ferguson.
Thank you so much, and thanks again for moderating to all of you as well. I appreciate the chance to chat with each and every one of you and all the work we've done together in my 12 years as Attorney General. It's a great question to end on, right? How to make sure that we're working together on the challenges we're facing. And a governor has broad powers, and where I see the partnership really extending as governor, as a couple examples, is a few. Number one, a governor proposes a budget. It's a huge document that impacts our lives. I'll make sure as a governor that I'm working with you and this community and communities all across the state to make sure it's a budget that prioritizes you. I said at the beginning, I'm the only candidate who does not accept any political donations from large corporations or corporate PACs. That's not the easy way to raise the money I need to run a campaign, but I do it because we now have 100,000 Washingtonians who have donated to my campaign. It's a massive grassroots army all across the state because I'm centering your voices in decisions we make. And as governor, I'll make sure you have a seat at the table for critical decisions the state's making. As an example, the governor often makes appointments to boards and commissions that make huge decisions on our lives. I'll make sure you have a seat at the table to make sure your voice is heard for those important boards and commissions. And that extends to other areas as well. Our judicial system. Governor Inslee, I believe, has made literally a couple hundred appointments to our judiciary. Vacancies that come up and the governor makes the appointment of what judge rules on cases of all range of issues facing our state. I'll make sure we have a bench, judges who reflect the broad diversity of our state. Lastly, thank you. Lastly, I should mention that I've been married to my wife, Colleen, for many years. She's an educator. She works at a community college. We're proud parents of 16-year-old twins, Jack and Katie. It's an honor to be here and see so many familiar faces and look forward to working with you as your next governor. Thank you very much.
And Congressman Reichert.
It's 2 minutes, right?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I'm a little bit surprised because I was told this was going to be a forum, not a debate. My opponent has mentioned my name at least 2 or 3 times and told some fibs. So I want to address just a couple of those, sadly. First of all, my opponent has accepted PAC money, and I know that because one of the PAC folks who visited with him first came to my office and said, we offered Bob Ferguson a PAC check, but he wouldn't take it. But what he told us to do was to give it to the Democrat state party, and then they would forward the check to him. That's dishonest, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what's happened to our government over the past 12 years. We've been deceived. We know that a gas tax did not cost us pennies. They cost us 50 cents a gallon. And every time we pay that gas tax, diapers go up, bread goes up, milk goes up, cost goes higher and higher. We have got to put the pause button on that gas tax. We can protect the environment at the same time. Now, I'll tell you, I want to be your governor, and I'm going to be honest with you, and we are going to work together. We're going to make this a partnership where you and I sit down together. Let me share a quick story for you. You might remember this. There was a Special Olympian training hard for his event. He got up to the starting line. The starting gun went off. He ran a few steps, tripped, and fell. The rest of the people in the race stopped. And you know what they did? They turned around, they came back, and they picked that special friend up. And they, arm in arm, walked across the finish line. Ladies and gentlemen, we all win when one wins. We all win. When we work together, we all win. Thank you, and God bless you.
I'm inclined to give 1 minute to Bob Ferguson to respond to the Congressman, and then an additional minute to respond again.
Well, I don't mind that he went over his time. It's no problem. Thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, very much.